Hello, welcome to Weekly Wildlife Wisdom. And today we're going to be talking about beautiful jays. There are lots of different jays all around the world, so I'm not going to list all of them because there's far too many. But in the UK, where I am living, we have the Eurasian jay, and if you have a look on my t-shirt, I've got another one of these lovely t-shirts. These are the 8 UK corvid species in order of size of wingspan. And right at the bottom here is the beautiful jay. So they are the smallest of the corvids in the UK. But they are, for me, they are certainly equally beautiful and magnificent. It's not about size, is it? It's about who we are and what we bring into the world. And so today, I'd like to share with you a little bit more about jay wisdom. The reason for that, as I say every week, I wait to see who shows up and wants to have their wisdom shared. And we've lived in this very rural little hamlet, it's not even a village, for about 11 years. And we have caught glimpses of jays flying in and out of the woodlands, which is where they love to be. But this week, I can't remember if it was Monday, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I looked out the kitchen window and there was a beautiful jay sitting on our fence in the back garden. And she started foraging and she could see me. I knew that she knew I was there. And I was just, as always, just sending her lots of love and telling her how beautiful she was and saying how wonderful it is to see her. And she was just maintaining eye contact with me while she was foraging on the ground. And I knew, well, jay, very unusual for a jay to come into our garden, looking out of the windows whenever I get the chance to see who's around and being delighted by them. So jay it is. So that's why it is a beautiful jay today. And the title that I gave to this weekly wildlife wisdom is Strength in Silence. And I think in today's modern human world, silence is something that is often feared. It's often actively avoided by many people who can't bear the thought of actually being peaceful and listening to their own inner voice, their own inner feelings. And so I wanted to bring that into this discussion because I think the jay has that wonderful ability to be very, not only secretive, but also most of the time very peaceful. They have got a call, several different calls, and as humans tend to declare them not very nice because they're quite sort of screechy. So it's not the prettiest from our human ears, but obviously it's their unique vibration and energy and voice. But a lot of the time they are very secretive and very quiet. And they also don't like to be seen. They don't like to be spotted. So hence seeing this beautiful jay was very unusual. So what I thought it'd be nice to do today is just think about why and maybe what, because that's an assumption. What is our relationship with being in silence? Do you feel comfortable in silence, really tuning in to your inner voice, to ancestral guidance, God, the angels, whatever your languaging and beliefs are around that? Do you feel comfortable in that space or do you resist it? And within us, I mean, we all have an ego, and the ego is the part of us that is trying to keep us safe and trying to get us to take often the line of least resistance. Sometimes not altogether that helpful, and sometimes that voice can talk us out of, no, you don't want to go and sit outside in silence, put the television on or have a look on your phone, or go and talk to somebody and gossip. All those things can get in the way of us being willing. And even if we are willing, sometimes we sabotage that. So I just want you to have a ponder of that for yourself as I share more about jay wisdom, because it's an interesting one. When we can obtain and learn so much from listening to the wisdom within and something that is higher than us, however you perceive that, it gives us so much greater benefit and insight and confidence in ourselves and the decisions that we make. So why would we resist it? So the J step forward, I think, to let us think about that and to share some of their deep wisdom about when and how to choose silence and secrecy, and also as a part of that, when it's a good time to actually then speak out and come forward and actually share what it is that you're planning or wanting to share as an opinion, and to make it visible. So again, as usual, there's a polarity, a time for stillness, a time for action, a time for silence, and a time for, visibility and voicing what we want to voice. Now, it's totally okay for us to have an opinion. In fact, in this day and age, I think perhaps more than ever, it's really important that we learn and we discern an opinion for ourselves and not just be shipped along with sheep mentality, no disrespect to sheep, and just do what everyone else is doing or follow the latest trend of thinking. We need to think for ourselves, and so it's really important, and it's also equally important for it to be okay for other people to have opinions as well. And again, there's a range, isn't there, a polarity of certain ways of thinking that I think most people, I would hope nearly everybody, would say, well, that's just flat out wrong. And then there's the opposite extreme where it can be all sorts of shades of grey, which can make up a totality of some issue rather than it just being black and white, which is what we tend to do in our modern society as humans, fighting, I'm right, you're wrong, end of story, So I think the J teaches us to use our discernment about when it's appropriate and most powerful to speak out, and when it's much more powerful to stay quiet and to go within and to just bring about the energy and the formation of something. The energy and the formation of something, particularly if it's a goal or something new that we want to bring into our life, to nurture it into strength and resilience before we then share it with the world. So I hope that makes sense. There's sort of a couple of different issues within that. So let's start with co-creating a goal or a dream. Now, if you think of something that you really, really want to do, and you're not sure and you feel a little bit uncertain, maybe a bit vulnerable, and you're not quite sure, the J teaches us to just nurture this dream inside. Just sit and think about it, maybe write it down somewhere that will be private, and just keep it secret within you until you've really developed it and honed it and done your research and learned and discovered, and you feel instinctively that it's the right time to share it. And I think that's really important, because when you share something, you can get a response from others that will potentially shift your beliefs about whether you can or can't do something. And that, it might be helpful, but sometimes people aren't really doing it to be helpful. Sometimes people can just feel threatened by the idea of you changing or you doing something differently, and their ego might come in and just say something to try and stop you from moving forward. And that's not always helpful. Sometimes they can say it from a genuine place, and they can actually help you to come up with new ways of thinking or new information that you need. But generally you get a feel, if you're listening from your heart, whether it's meant to support or whether it's not so helpful. So avoiding that's a good thing. But also it's about holding it within. And I think that's what the J speaks to us about. It's about bringing power to our vision and our dream, and making sure that we are in a powerful place before we start to share it. Now, J's, one of their most important roles that we know of as humans, I'm sure there's lots of other things that they do that we don't know about, to make sure that they've got enough food to take them through the coldest winters when there's very little new food available. So you might think that's fairly ordinary and that's something that they just do to feed themselves. But if you think a bit more deeply about it, it also seeds the next generation of oaks, because they don't eat all of them. They eat some of them. And the ones that they don't eat and that don't get eaten by any other beings will then sprout and hopefully grow into mighty oaks. And the oak trees love the fact that the jays take the acorns far away from the actual mother tree, so that they have plenty of space, because oaks love to be in their own space and to have plenty of room for their enormous canopies to grow over hundreds of years. And so their beloved friends, the oak trees, their food providers, their shelter givers, and their nest providers, in their branches, are given this collaborative, mutually beneficial outcome. So it's a real synergistic process, and it's beautiful. And if we think about how we do that in our life as well, I think there's real wisdom there as well. Who do we depend on? Who do we rely on? And how do we support them? And do we nurture and give back to them in equal measure? Is it balanced and is it appropriate? Do we help to support each other? And in today's world, I think that's vital. Now, whilst they're doing this with the acorns, they don't tell everybody about it. They don't rush around shouting it from the treetops. And look, I've buried lots of acorns over here, because if they did, you'd have all sorts of beings coming to eat them. And I know sometimes I've watched magpies watching squirrels burying their cash, and then they'll nip in and steal them. So that sort of thing does go on, and it's, that's nature's law, isn't it? Fair enough. But the jay doesn't actively want to, broadcast what they're doing so that everybody and anybody around hears and goes to take their beautiful new beginning of an oak tree that's so important to them. And so they hold it secret, because they don't want to encourage sabotage, which is what I was saying earlier about, you don't want people to step in because you've too early shared what's most important to you. And that somehow diminishes your ability to bring about whatever it is that you're bringing about. I don't think many of us will be burying acorns, but some of us might be planting trees. So there's some correlation there. But in terms of our goals and the things that we want to bring to life, there's a real wisdom in thinking that through and feeling into when it's right. Patience as well, because often we get excited, we want to share with people what we're doing and what we're dreaming into vision, what we're visioning and co-creating into life. But oftentimes I think it's quite good for us to learn that patience and to hold it within, which is something that we're probably discouraged from doing in the mainstream as well. And also, it's also not just about when you share it for you, but it's also about how you share it, and thinking carefully about what you want to communicate to others, what reaction you would like to encourage from others, and how you can communicate in a way that brings support and encouragement from others. You can't guarantee that, but the way that you communicate things can have a really big impact. And far too often, we just rush into things. We don't think things through. And I am generalizing here, but you'll know for yourself what your tendency is. Some people, we don't think things through. And I am generalizing here, but you'll know for yourself what your tendency